I don't know why I'm writing this as if you could ever read it. Maybe it's the only place I can say what I couldn't say out loud in your house, in front of your things, in front of the silence you left behind. When you passed away, everything in me stopped in places I didn't know could freeze. People say grief is loud, but mine wasn't. Mine became careful, measured, like I had to survive inside it without breaking anything else. That is why I never told her, your wife. She came into the house after your death like someone trying to hold a life together that was already slipping through her fingers. At first, I watched her quietly. She moved through rooms with certainty, opening cupboards, sorting papers, answering calls meant for you. I told myself that was normal, that grief makes people reach for control, but control and ownership are not the same thing. You left everything in my name, the house, the cars, the account. I didn't ask you why. Maybe you trusted me to understand what others would not. Maybe you didn't trust the future at all. I will never know now. And I didn't tell her, not because I wanted power, not because I wanted revenge, but because something in me feared what truth does to people who are already unstable with loss. At first, silence felt like protection. Then it started feeling like a weight. She began asking questions that didn't sound like questions of grief anymore. They sounded like questions with destinations, account details, ownership papers, insurance documents, each question placed carefully, as if she already knew part of the answer and was waiting for me to confirm the rest. I avoided her gaze more than I avoided her words. I told myself I was just delaying pain, but delay has its own consequences. One evening, I noticed something small missing from your study. A file that had been there since the day of your funeral arrangements. The next day, there were copies made where there shouldn't have been copies. I said nothing. I convinced myself it was confusion. Paperwork shifts after death. People make mistakes when they are grieving. But grief does not usually require notarization. The shift didn't come from an argument. There was no confrontation between us, no dramatic exposure of intent. It came quietly, through a bank notification I almost ignored. A request had been made to transfer control of one of the accounts tied to your estate. The request had been flagged. Something in the documentation did not align. A compliance officer called me directly. Not her, me. That was the moment everything changed without a single raised voice. I remember sitting in that chair, holding the phone, hearing terms like verification, authorization, legal ownership, words that do not belong to mourning, but belong to structure, systems, authority. For the first time since your death, I did not feel only like a mother who had lost a son. I felt like the person the system recognized, and I hated how stable that made everything feel. The bank froze the process. Access was restricted. No accusations were made, but none were needed. In silence, control shifted, not toward emotion, toward documentation. That evening, she stood in the hallway longer than usual. She did not ask directly. She already knew something had changed. People can feel when doors close without being told. I did not confront her. I did not explain. I simply said the bank would handle everything now. It was not cruelty, it was exhaustion. After that, the house became quieter in a different way. Not the silence of grief, but the silence of boundaries. She moved through it less confidently. Not defeated, not removed, just aware that something she had been circling was no longer reachable. And me, I kept expecting relief. But what came instead was uncertainty that I cannot resolve even now, because I still don't know what I did. Did I protect what you built? Or did I use your absence to hold on to something I had no right to define alone? Some nights I think I was right to keep it hidden. That truth would have turned sorrow into conflict before it had time to settle into something bearable. Other nights I think silence is just another form of control, dressed up as mercy. I still haven't spoken to her about it. Not truly, not in a way that would make everything clear. Maybe clarity was never possible in this house after you left. All I know is this. I did not lose control of your legacy through force or betrayal. I lost certainty through my own hesitation, and I am still living inside the consequences of that choice, long after the bank made its decision, and long after I stopped believing silence could keep anything safe. I keep this letter because it is the only place where I can admit that I don't fully understand what I preserved or what I quietly destroyed in the process. Your mother